but we'll kick off this Loudon Utility Board workshop for May. First thing I'd like to do is read you this statement about electronic meetings. To ensure government operations continue to function openly and transparently during the COVID-19 emergency while taking measures to protect the health and safety of citizens and government officials. Governor Bill Lee issued Executive Order number 16 on March 20th, allowing governing bodies to conduct essential business electronic means. A link to the electronic meeting access and information is available online at www.loudonutilities.org. Thank you. I don't get a penny for that. I think let's have a roll call and make sure everybody's hooked up and we can hear everybody. Director McCatherine. Director McCatherine, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Director Farmer?
Here.
Thank you. Director Watson?
I'm present.
Thank you. Director Dixon?
Here.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Now, the first thing I'd like to do before we get really cranking here is, as most of you all know, we lost a long-time standing employee, Jeff Belcher. He went on to be with the Lord a few days back. And Jeff became an operator with the Loudon Utilities on March 29th, 1982. He obtained his Grade 3 certification in April 1983 and his Grade 4 certification in May of 1984. After working 4 years after that, he was promoted to Chief Operator of the Water Treatment Plant on February the 27th, 1988. And I know most of y'all are like me. We're going to miss seeing that big old smile. He was a great guy, fabulous employee, and we're all going to miss him much. So if you would, I would appreciate if you join me in a moment of silence, and please remember his family. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now I'd like to welcome everybody to the workshop. We've got a few people here with us, and 2 or 3 here up on the stage tonight. We've still got a couple of directors that are still at home. But we welcome everybody, and we welcome all the visitors that might be being with us here or on the electronic side of the house. And if you have anything that you'd like to bring before the board, we'd be glad to entertain it at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I have something.
Yes, Mayor.
Just a little shout out to the utilities, the AMI, just to show how it works. We got a visit today down at the church from Harry Purdy. Said, y'all got a water leak somewhere. You got a meter or something's leaking. The meter showed up a lot of usage. Said it like kicked on at 11 o'clock Saturday. I said, we ain't been having church. We ain't even been over there. Come find out there was a wedding and it was a toilet leaking. And if he hadn't come by and told us that, no telling how long it ran, because we ain't planning any services or anything over there. So that just goes to show how important this AMI is. We had a leaky toilet. It would have ran for a month or so probably, because nobody's over there. But it just so happened there was a wedding there Saturday, and I guess someone used the restroom, and it showed up on a report, and he come down, and we If it hadn't been for that, we wouldn't have went in there and checked.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate the information. I know personally, I had the same thing happen at my house right after they put the meter in at the house. And I know there's been probably a lot of others, that we don't know about, but it has really been a blessing to have that AMI system. It really has.
He had it pinpointed down to about what time it started.
No.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring before the board? Okay, thank you, and thank you for everybody for being with us, either here or there. You're appreciated. First item on our agenda is Chris Mitchell's presentation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Chris Mitchell is our electric power management consultant. He's been consulting with LUB for a number of years now. He serves some 7 to 8 dozen local power companies like Loudon Utilities throughout the Tennessee Valley. And Chris is joining us by video conference today. And just, Chris, before you join us, I want to give you the lay of the land here. All you can see is the vantage point of our video cameras, but inside this room, there's approximately 8 people in the audience who are appropriately socially distanced, and we have about the same number of outside visitors logged in from home. Physically present with us today are 3 board members. 2 board members have video conferenced in as allowed, so we have 100% board attendance. And if you could, for the benefit of those present and those zoomed in, just, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do professionally.
Okay, thank you. I have been consulting for about 11 years, and before that I was with TVA for 20 years, the last 7 being a vice president. I basically retired and went from doing the work at TVA to doing it for the distributors. I basically do rate consulting and financial analysis for electric utilities. I serve 81 of the 154 LPCs across the valley. And on a side note, I am the mayor of the city of Norse. So I say that to give you context that I understand some of the processes and workings of a municipal organization. So.
Thank you, Chris. Chris,
thank you.
One of the value adds Chris provides is a rate recommendation going into the summer for budget season, because we set our electric rates for the fall, and so it's that time of year again, and Chris is going to provide us with a summary analysis and rate recommendation for 2020-2021.
All right.
Okay, so technically I am to share my screen now, right?
Yes.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Loudon Utilities rate discussion provided by Chris Mitchell.
Okay. So as we go through this, if someone has a question, just interrupt me, and because it's hard for me to see the screen, watch the screen, and the small pictures. Okay. So with that, I'll first say that this has been several years now. I met with you as a board, and I continue to say that you made good decisions in the past. Your financial position is excellent, and we still have decisions to make to keep you in that position, but you are not fixing problems from the past. You basically are making decisions recommendations that keep you on the path of the good position. So at the end of the presentation, I will give a recommendation for an action for this October that's consistent with the previous few years' actions also. But first, I'm going to go through the financials and give a sense of where we stand now. So with that, first, I'm going to talk about the residential. The format of the charts are the bars are the individual years, going back to 2012, with each bar being its own month. The magenta color, reddish color, is the current year. And you can see the lines are cumulative lines that take the year and compare how are we doing year to date. So this report takes us through March, and you can see this magenta color is the usage of the residential over time. And I want to highlight that we did not have much of a winter, and therefore you can see in January how low the volume usage was, and that's bringing the average down. So it's too early to predict how summer is going to be. So far this month, it's been mild, and April was mild. So these comments are independent of the pandemic. This was pre-pandemic here through March. The number of customers has been growing. If you look at July of 2011, you had 9,059 residential customers. You now have 10,553, and it's a nice positive slope over time. And the top wedge of this chart is also showing an increase. It is your non-residential customers, like small businesses. And you can see it's had a nice growth. Compared to other distributors, this is an excellent chart. Many are flat. Some are actually decreasing as people move from the rural areas to the cities. So you've had growth, and it's continuing. This is your total system sales, and you can see the magenta color is the current year, the line is the cumulative through March, and last year's numbers are the blue with the blue square here, cumulative. So you can see that we are down from last year on sales, but a lot of that is because of the winter being warm. Just didn't sell as much heat. Okay. This is a longer term view of the sales. You can see that you've had growth over time in your industries. This is the top line, and the residential is the middle line. You've had some growth, but there is conservation that goes on at a residential level. Over time, they have been putting in LEDs and more efficient units and so on. So even though you've had increase in population and number of meters, there is some level of offset to conservation. What we're projecting in the future is, to be conservative, is that it's fairly flat, so that if there is growth, then you will outperform the estimates. This is the O&M expenditures, and you can see that you are less than last year on a cumulative basis. Again, the blue square is last year through March this year, so you are under last year's number. It is expected. You can see the stair stepping up of the number of the cumulative numbers by the end of the year. It is expected that in general, O&M increases with inflation. Therefore, when we start to look at the out year numbers, forecast 21 through 24, you can see I've got a slight slope up of about 3% annual inflation in O&M. The two black lines on this chart represent a boundary of what most people fall within, and you do, and that's back from 2004 to now, an escalation of between 3 and 5%, 3% being the lower line, 5% being the upper line. And you can see you've been between those, and your system is in good shape. The Next chart is plant capital, and you've made the sizable investment in the past, and it's completing and coming down to a level that is about $2.5 million a year projected in the future. As you spend money in capital, then it comes back through as depreciation. That's this dotted line. You can see it's going up over time slightly too as you close things to plant. Net income. It is above last year. You can see the blue square here is last year, and now you're above it. Well, O&M is lower this year than last year, and that's helping. But you also have a partnership credit for you signing the long-term contract with TVA that is also helping you in reduced power costs. So even though you had low volume over the winter, the partnership credit is, and the addition of lower O&M is making your financials above last year. A longer-term view of this is the blue line. You can see that we projected that increase in net income, and then it flattens out, and then you start to have the pressures of O&M escalations over time and depreciation over time overtake the impact of the partnership credit and start to have a downward slope again. I put another case on this that's in orange with the little star, and this is the potential of the impact of a pandemic. Now, we will know more the months to come, but right now we're projecting that it has a slight impact to net income through reduction of electric sales. It comes back to normal, we project, in 2022. It also, I'll note, does not include any impact from closing of prior work orders. Okay, from a cash perspective, you have made an adjustment. You're paying the power bill a little bit earlier, so that is an explanation of the step down from last year's level. The top of this blue bar down to where we're at now is generally because we stepped up a little sooner, and that's reflected in the month-end numbers. When we look at a longer-term view of cash, we see that it has come down. You have been spending on your plant, and we see it stabilize. On the left-hand side is the actual cash numbers. On the right-hand side is the ratio that TVA maintains to look to see your financial health. And you can see it stabilizes. The orange line is, with the stars on it, is the depiction of our estimate of the pandemic impact. So you can see there is a slight impact of the reduced sales that's projected. We feel like both the base case with the capital spend and the increase in O&M is going to provide you stable cash flow over the next years, and the pandemic just lowers it slightly, but you're still stable and you're above the level of any concern from the ratios that TVA maintains.
Chris, real quick, can you take the board through the three straight line benchmarks there, maroon, orange, and teal?
Yes, sir. So the teal, the bottom one, is about 8%, and if your cash gets to the level that you start to approach that, then you have alternatives. One is that TVA would be flexible and allow you to use some of their ability to lend you money and pay the power bill late through some arrangements. And but you are not approaching that, but that is a level that we would just start to look at. Well, what is the future slope of the line? The orange one is a level that we try to make that actually happen. So when I model this in the future, we try to be between these two lines or just slightly above it, and try to be the slope of the line in the future, be hovering up and down around that orange orange line, which you are. The red one at the top is 33%, and that's at the level that TVA would say you have excess cash, and they would start to ask you questions of what's your intentions of using the cash for. And in your case, you had approached that in prior years, and you have used it to invest in your system, and the cash level has come down. So I see that you will slightly grow cash over time and have it available for future investments, but it's extremely stable.
Thank you.
Okay. This is just a quick summary of the grid access charge, and you can see that it's complicated, but I'm going to try to make it simple. TVA basically wanted to create a fixed component to the wholesale rate, so they looked at your 5 years of energy that you've purchased and said they want to charge you a half a penny for that, and it be fixed on the historical 5-year average. And that is depicted in these gray bars. If you sell more energy than what was in that 5-year average, then you collect a little bit extra and you basically improve your financials. So systems, bottom line, systems that are growing like yours do well with this new structure. Systems that are in decline actually are financially stressed a little bit. So I depict that with green and red. The green is depicting that you actually had increased sales last fall. January again was very mild, so you didn't have, that was a negative month, and then you had several positive months. And overall, you're $65,000 to the good on that new component that TVA's put into the retail rates. This is a depiction of your partnership credit. It started in September, and this line with the dashes is my projection that you will get close to $600,000 on the partnership credit over this fiscal year. You're on track to achieve a little bit more than that because it is a volumetric rate. And next year, you will get 2 additional months in the fiscal year because you will start in July, and you will get a little over $700,000. As you grow, you will get more because it is volumetric. Again, this is how offsetting the financial stresses coming from the pandemic and also from the winter not being very cold. Now for the suggestion, the continuation of actions that we've had in the past. We have had several years that we have made revenue neutral changes to your retail rates, and this is for us to have more stable revenues and have no impact to the average customer. So in summary, it is zero financial impact. It's called revenue neutral. It's as close to zero as I can get it. It's within $677 of solving for that revenue neutral. It takes the customer charge for the different classes and increases it, and then decreases the energy rate, which is the KWH rate. So you can see I've gone up $2 in residential, which is consistent with past years that we've made these steps, and GSA 1, which is the second meter at a house, or is the small commercial customers. $2 increase, and then a decrease in the KWH energy rate so that they will be revenue neutral. I'll give you a little bit more detail on that at the next 2 slides. The cost of service that we perform justifies that level going up over $10 on each of those. So we're walking that very slowly up on the fixed portion and lowering the variable portion. GSA 2, which is a mid-sized commercial, and GSA 3, which is a larger commercial, going up $5 and $30 and going down on their energy appropriately. For a little bit more detail, I'll go into for the residential and GSA 1 classes. This is a volume of going from 500 kWh monthly use all the way to 3,500. So this is on an average use for this customer class is 1,292, and you can see that over here the impact is zero. This is calculating the bill, the customer charge and the energy coming to a total bill. And then on the proposed, on the right-hand side is the new calculation. So it basically has no impact to the average user. To the user that uses a lot of volume, which could be an uninsulated home, or it could be a large home, it actually has a reduction. It actually is about a 1% reduction in their bill. To a home that is low usage, then it has a slight increase. And you can see it's a 2% increase. So it's basically mathematically solved for the average user at zero. Same concept for GSA 1, decrease for the larger volume user, a slight increase for the low volume user, and the average user is zero impact. That's the completion of the slides that I have available, but I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Chris, I have one, this is Director Farmer.
Yes.
We're looking in the future, hopefully, to get to a 3-year budget plan. Will your numbers be adaptable to that 3-year budget plan?
Absolutely. I work with your management staff, and we maintain a 5-year review. So you saw on a lot of my charts that we actually go out 5 years. So every year we add another year. So I think this supports that conceptually excellently. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Director McCatherine, did you have any questions? I don't see any response.
What is any? No? You guys got any?
Don't have any.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, and thank you again for letting me join by Zoom. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate your
Thank you.
assistance today.
Okay, so I'm going, I just hit the leave button, and then I'm off, right?
Yes.
Do you need me to stay for any more of the meeting?
That's not necessary, only if you choose to.
Okay, I've got
Thank
my
you.
own muscle meeting I'm going to go to now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the benefit committee.
Yes, so this is a workshop, and the purpose of the workshop is to discuss ideas and policies that could turn into decisions at your regular meetings. This board sets budgets and policy for this utility. The benefits that we pay our employees is a mixture of policy and budget. We determine a level of service that we wish to provide for our employees in terms of their benefit package. We then, based on history of usage, determine a cost of that desired service level, and that is what is incorporated into the budget. So, starting in February of this year, this body and the City Council had an expanded discussion of how much money was being put into the fund that funds our self-funded healthcare plan. You may recall the ketchup bottle analogy. After some 2-3 months of discussion, there was positive feedback received for the idea of forming a benefit committee to study this for more in depth. We have prepared, and Chris Fry, our attorney, has reviewed a resolution that would create this benefit committee. It would be a joint resolution between this body and the City Council. We have, from staff, through the solicitation of volunteers, recommended membership to the committee. That membership is recommended as follows: Tim Dixon, Utility Board member. Gene Farmer, Utility Board member. Bill Jeems, firefighter. James Webb, Police Chief. Clay Townsend, employee, Gas, Water, and Sewer. Aubrey Cagle, employee, Electric Department. John Franklin, Marine Corps Colonel and resident. Jim Thomason, certified public accountant and resident. If there is still a consensus amongst this body, we can carry this forward to your regular meeting in the form of a resolution for you to consider that would both create and empower this committee.
Does anybody have any questions? So you would bring it back when we have a regular meeting, 10th of the month?
We'll bring you a resolution that would kickstart the committee if this body desires.
Yeah, okay. Everybody satisfied with what we're saying?
I have no questions.
Okay, Ty, just put her on the agenda and bring her to us.
Will do. Next on the agenda, item 4. One of the biggest issues facing this utility is the underfunding of the water department. We have performed a cost of service study that shows the amount of money we need on an annual basis to fund the department. Included in that annual funding number is a list of needed improvements to the water department, not the least of which is the completion of the expansion of the water treatment plant, taking us from the ability to produce 14 million gallons a day all the way up to 20 million gallons a day. This project started in 2011. It was not completed, and it's been on the shelf since then. That's between $13 and $14 million. Also included is an item that was started years earlier but not completed, and that's a replacement of our water infrastructure that crosses the Tennessee River and feeds our industrial parks. Project is around $3.6 million. Those two are the main ones, but together with other improvements, we have some $19 to $20 million of projects that we need to fund. The problem is the rate structure doesn't support that. We went on the hunt for grants and additional supplies of cash to the water department so that we would not have to leverage as much money through debt. We were successful in identifying approximately $2.5 million from the federal government, and through negotiations with the comptroller that Attorney Chris Fry participated in, we've identified $10 million within the gas fund that is eligible for use for the water treatment plant expansion by a grant to the Industrial Development Board. The Loudon Industrial Development Board would then fund that construction project directly via the grant.
Yeah, now once all the funds come in, what are we going to still lack?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole Curtis, our finance director, put about $6.5 million.
That's correct.
Is what we would go to the bond market for.
6.5? Okay, $6.5 million. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
How much will that, so whenever we go and we transfer this money out of the gas fund, what will that leave in that gas fund, for, future down the road to try to figure out, what we're going to do with that? And then also the 10 million that we've identified in it, can we, like a breakdown of where that's going to be designated to once we send it over to that committee?
Sure,
That-
it'll
that
be,
other fund.
I'll let Nicole Curtis tell you how much money's left in the gas fund, but first let me tell you how we arrived at that number. We went through an exercise with John Davis, Larry Joe Dockery, and Ed Adame to assemble a 5 to 10 year outlook of necessary projects for the gas department, including the set aside of 2 years of general operating revenue. These are very conservative measures, and inside that project list, we properly funded the gas department for a healthy future. And after the $10 million transfer, it would leave Nicole with what balance exactly?
$12 million.
The $12 million will be left in the gas fund for its operation and future maintenance.
Okay. And the projects, once we turn this money over, is there any way where we can get, I'd like to see what kind of the breakdown of how the projects that we're going to fund with this, kind of how this money is going to be designated toward this project, that, the different projects. I think it would help us to better comprehend that.
Absolutely, absolutely. You'll see that list, and you'll see exactly where the gas grant fund is going.
I'm not sure if Director Farmer and Director McCaffrey can hear me without my mask on, so there will be enough expenditure associated just with the water treatment plant expansion to keep up the bulk of it, not all of it. And what would be within the authorized resolution that any funds not so expended will come back to Loudon Utilities. So there will not be any way for any of this $10 million to be spent on something that LUB did not directly invoice for. Either IDB will pay the invoices, or more likely LUB will pay the invoices directly and then seek reimbursement from these grant funds.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you, Ty.
That is the water treatment plant funding resolution. It will come before you in your regular meeting, and Attorney Fries is in the process of completing that for us. Fiscal year 2020-2021 budget preview. March financials will be reviewed by Nicole Curtis along with our 2020-2021 preliminary budget. The key takeaway from this budget should be a clear understanding of the mixed stream of additional funding being allocated to the water department. That's the big swing this year, is to re-kickstart that project. Thank you.
Can you show the PowerPoint? No.
Would it be I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Would it be reasonable on the previous item on the water treatment plant funding resolution if we have that coincide with the budget proposal put together, so we can see the impact of both?
You will see that in the next few slides. First up, let me make this a little bit smaller so I can see. First up, I want to walk through the March financials very quickly just to give you an idea of where each department is as of March. I apologize if the numbers are small. Electric department, as Chris Mitchell mentioned.
I'm sorry, but all I'm getting is feedback. I'm not hearing any words.
How about this? Can you hear me now?
That's better.
I feel like the Verizon guy. Okay. The electric department, as Chris Mitchell mentioned earlier, operating costs are trending behind previous year-end. So far, the net revenues are $1.2 million. We expect some effect from COVID, but we are not sure what that is just yet. So we're in monitoring mode at this time. Looking at the gas department on the next slide. Net revenues so far are at 1.7 million. We're entering the time whenever expenses will outpace revenues each month, so that number will decline. It is still ahead of what we had budgeted. And on to the water department. We're looking at net revenues for the year 2020 through March, net revenues of $810,000. And on the sewer department, next slide, net revenues for the year is 1.1 million. Each department should be at a threshold of at least 75%. All departments are beyond 75% of their budgeted net revenue, so we are on track from a budget standpoint. I went through that quickly so that we can focus on the budget, and Chris Mitchell gave a deep dive into the electric department, so I want to focus on the gas, water, and sewer, especially with the dynamics going on between the gas and water department. And you will receive this in a one-page PDF. It's a lot of information. I just want to take you through what all is on here. I'll start off with the gas department. We serve over 4,600 homes in Loudon and Monroe counties. Net revenues are detailed at the top. We are projecting those to be flat in the years to come. I've lost my screen, just one moment. We're projecting revenues to be flat. In the next section of the slide, will you go to the next slide, please, Ty? In the next section, you would see expenditures, and those are broken down into wholesale cost, operating cost, and non-operating cost. With the current year projections and next year what we're proposing for the budget, the only change is the additional cost for medical, which was discussed at the March meeting. When you come down to the end, a very conservative number that's projected for year-end 2020 is $463,000 in net revenues. That is a very, very conservative number, but I wanted to do that for the sake of what we're talking about doing with the water department. And our budget for next year, conservatively, would be $919,000. The next section is debt service. The gas department does not have any debt, so it does not apply. And below that is our cash balances. Currently, the gas department is projected to have $21 million at the end of this fiscal year. It could very likely be more than that because of that conservative $463,000 in net revenues. What we're looking at for year-end 2021, after net revenues of $919,000, we would issue a grant of $10 million. You can see that is detailed on the schedule, and that would bring the gas department cash balance to right at $11 million. Again, these are based on conservative net revenue numbers. Below that, at the very bottom, is a schedule of capital investment, and that is a simple attempt to put a timeline to what the gas department would spend on capital projects over the next 4 years. All four numbers, 2.5, 2.5, 2 million, and 1 million, that comes up to $8 million, which is what we could possibly foresee in the next 5 years for the gas department to spend. So you see the impact of these numbers carried out years into the future. We're not looking at just 1 year. We're looking at next year and then 3 years beyond that. So I hope that has answered some of the questions that came up earlier. I'll stop now in case there's something more I need to elaborate on. Are we okay, Director Farmer?
Yeah, I can't see the numbers real good on this little iPad, so are you going to email those to us?
Yes, you will receive this PDF in email.
I'd like to take some time and absorb them a little more.
Really what I want to...
One-third sounds good, but I think that this is very important that we're connecting the dots here with the water treatment plant funding off of item 4 into this, along with Chris Mitchell's impact. So all that needs to work cohesive, so.
You're exactly right. This is something we've discussed for some time, is looking beyond just revenues and expenditures, but it also incorporates the components of debt and our cash balances and what we anticipate investing in the system. All of that is summarized on one page. And I apologize for the size of the text, but it's a lot of information. You will have it in your email inbox. On to the water department is the next slide. And you'll see more numbers here. It's the same sections, though. You have revenues, expenditures, net revenues. For the water department, I will say that total revenues at the top include what has been recommended from our cost of services study. The rate adjustments that have been recommended through that study are incorporated into these revenue numbers. Operating cost, non-operating cost come down to a net revenue number, and that gets factored into the debt service that the water department currently carries. You will see in year 2021 a possibility of a new debt of $6.5 million that Manager Ross mentioned earlier, and the impact of that. The crucial part of this is managing that next line, which is the debt service coverage ratio. We have to keep that above 1.2, so that factors into a lot of our decision making. And below that, the next section is our cash balances and the capital investment. Again, whenever you add up what is projected over the next 4 years, that is actually $21 million over the next 4 years. We have a detail of those projects that we can include with the line item budget. If you want to go ahead to the sewer department, go one more. Again, really this is about presenting the format and the information that you're going to see. Total revenues in the sewer department are considered to be flat. We do not have any rate adjustments on the radar at this time. Expenditures are flat for the next budget cycle with the exception of medical costs. Beyond that, in the forecast, we have anticipated some costs for inflation and what we can identify with a depreciation and interest. Then that comes down to the net revenues. You have the detail on our debt service for the sewer department and the cash balances and capital investment at the bottom. There's been a lot of focus on the water department capital projects. The wastewater department is also looking at finalizing an upgrade to the disinfection system and some upgrades to a pump station, and there is a potential river crossing for the sewer department as well. At this time, the rates and the cash balance appear to support that, from what we can tell. That's everything I have, and if there's any more questions, I'll do my best.
Thank you, Nicole. Excellent presentation.
Anybody have any questions? Thanks, Nicole. We certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is TCRS funding rate.
Yeah, for the folks at home, the TCRS funding rate is a Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, which this utility participates in on behalf of its employees. We receive a summary recommendation from the state of Tennessee as to what to contribute in order to assist the pool in keeping things solvent. It is mainly based on the performance of investments made by the TCRS fund. This year, the recommendation came in early March. You will recall that was before the pandemic really hit. At that particular point in time, investments were performing very well. We had a record stock market. The economy was humming. And at that time, the state recommended a 50% reduction versus what we had contributed last year. That recommendation is now dated, and what we are recommending is that we hold steady and continue funding the retirement system for our employees at the same rate as last year, rather than the half that was recommended. For the utility, that would be 4.57%.
Okay, so you're just going to leave it like it is?
Yep, it's in keeping with our static budget. It's conservative, and it sets us up well in the future for what we will expect in the coming years to be request for more money from the state in TCRS contributions.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you, Ty. Next item is a safety report.
Director of Support Services, Jason Brown, reports no injuries, no reportable injuries for the month of April.
Good. And we don't have the natural gas rate yet, do we?
Not as of yet. It did not come in time for your workshop. We should, as usual, have it by your regular meeting.
Okay. Ty, do you have anything else for us?
No. Thank you for your presence, both physically and digitally. And thought we had a good meeting. And thanks for entertaining our ideas and concepts. And we look forward to discussing this further with you at your regular meeting later this month.
Okay, thank you. Director McCatherine, do you have any questions? Do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'm fine.
Director Farmer, do you have anything to add on?
No, sir.
Director Dixon?
I'm good. Thank you.
Take care of it.
Just the Memorial Day reminder.
Do you have anything?
I think they want to recommend that we move our next meeting to Tuesday, the day after Memorial Day.
Oh, is it going to, okay. I didn't realize it was going to hit
That's what
on
we have it, I think we have it advertised that way.
Yeah, just mainly for the good of the group, just be mindful that we won't be meeting on the Memorial Day holiday. We'll be meeting the next day, which is a Tuesday, at the regular time.
Good, no problem. Do you have anything else?
Motion. I'm good.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for attending.